Welcome to the I Hate Critics movie review podcast. I'm professional film critic Sean Patrick. With me is Jeff.
Hello, everyone.
Jeff, how do people get your art?
JeffLaster.com is my website. And if you are in the Quad City vicinity, Iowa, Illinois, or anywhere nearby and you want to come, this weekend, March 8th and 9th, I will be at the QC Toy Show at the Bend Expo Center in East Moline, Illinois. Bringing artwork, I'm bringing some toys, and some ephemera that I'm trying to downsize with. So come and see me.
Excellent. And of course, if you want to read anything that I've written, you can find all of that on our social media pages. You can find it on Blue Sky. You can find it on X, where I am at Podcast Sean. Did I say X? And what the hell is X? Twitter. Twitter, it's Podcast Sean. Yeah. So find me there. And sorry about that. My mic came on. My mic came on. Okay. Yeah. Bob, if you're listening, edit that out. So yeah, like I said, Podcast Sean on Twitter. Let's get into it. Of course, we want to start with the most important news of the past week, which is that Gene Hackman passed away. Gene Hackman, a legendary actor, been retired for the past, almost 25 years that he'd given up acting, and had lived a pretty happy life out in New Mexico. And we don't know yet what happened, other than being 95 years old. He did, at the very least, he lived a very full life. You hate to see it end in a way that wasn't, ideal, but at the same time, the man's legacy is unimpeachable. For me, I first came to notice him in the 80s, seeing Mississippi Burning for the first time with him and Willem Dafoe. I believe we were shown that actually in a class, a history class when I was relatively young. They showed us that movie and to give us kind of the history of both racism and especially racism in the South. And it was quite a bold move for the teacher to choose that film, because it's not an easy one for anyone to get through, let alone young kids. And I appreciate that. Then of course he just is there all the time throughout the 90s, starring in various different things. Of course, as a little kid, you get to know him in Superman, playing Lex Luthor. And yeah, it just a remarkable resume. Jeff, where did you first come to learn about Gene Hackman?
I think the first time I remember him was in Superman, where, like you said, he played Lex Luthor. I thought that he was the bumbling Lex Luthor, I guess we should say, but not the super villain that he was in the comics necessarily. That's kind of where I first saw him. Then I kind of saw him in all around as I was growing up. The one that I remember kind of really paying attention to him in was The Firm.
Oh, sure.
That was kind of my first exposure to him as an adult, where I'd actually go see a movie. I did see Unforgiven later. Mm-hmm. And I guess I never really thought about how much I'd seen him in until, I realized that he had retired, and there was pictures of him wearing stuff 90-year-old men wear out in public. And everybody was capping on it. Like, this is literally one of the greatest actors we've ever had. And you can't just let him be. I think too, as I got older and I started to pay attention to him, that's kind of paying attention to him is kind of when I started to pay attention to more classic movies. We've talked about The French Connection in the conversation on the show. Young Frankenstein, he was memorable in that. Much later, probably my 30s, I finally watched The Poseidon Adventure, because there was a kind of a thing. And when I lived in Chicago, we would go to show tunes night at Sidetrack, and they would show different show tunes from different movies and TV and whatever. And one of them was the Poseidon Adventure, where they do the morning after, and it was there. There was a scene where Shelley Winter says, "I can swim," and she swims underneath. And so I was like, I'd never seen that. And then I saw that, and I'm like, I had no idea that he was in that movie. And that movie is like a trip. Um, so he didn't just do stuff like The Conversation and French Connection. He would also do silly stuff. Like, I mean, Superman ultimately, even though it's a great superhero movie, it's a silly movie. He's silly in
Mhm.
it. Um, I mean, he retired after Welcome to Mooseport. I don't know. He is definitely uh, a seriously great actor in stuff like Mississippi Burning, but then it's Loose Cannons and the Birdcage. He was in that. Just stuff like
Which I would argue that the Birdcage is as good as it is because of him, because you've got everybody else just sort of flying all over the room, playing these broad characters, and
yeah,
you need a straight man, and he's the straightest of straight men in that
literally
movie.
and figuratively. Um,
I get it.
yeah, he.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think my favorite by him is the Royal Tenenbaums as Gene Hackman. Like,
Yeah.
because it's kind of a mix of his silly and serious.
He's amazing in that movie, and the way he adapts to tone, as well as any actor, he can just work with any director and adapt to their tone brilliantly, which is not something that every actor can do, as so many different actors have shown. Um, you mentioned something about people, saying things about him when he was 90 years old and they saw him in public. It was a rare thing to see him in public, but when they saw him, and I think part of that is seeing someone of such strength, looking frail and weak. It sparks that sort of fear that people have of aging. Not to justify it, just to understand it. That's
Yeah,
probably. I would hope that that more than just simply being mean is really what was going on there. But he was such a project. He did project so much strength and vitality, and he was never the most like in shape guy, but he was a strong guy. He was always a presence. You always felt Gene Hackman when he was in there, and seeing that not being the case, I'm sure affected a lot of people. Um, the One of the many things that stand out about him, I think, I was not long ago, or actually probably about 8 years ago, we did Bonnie and Clyde. Bob and I did as the classic, and that film is the bridge between the old Hollywood, the Hollywood that came about with stage actors coming from Broadway and moving to films. The Bonnie and Clyde is kind of this bridge between the very theatrical actors and the new modern way of acting, which is much more subtle and realistic and kind of more proper to the medium, I would say. And Hackman comes into that movie alongside Warren Beatty. Beatty's doing kind of a new modern acting, which is very reserved. He's still charismatic, but not broad. So it's not that hit the back of the room with your energy kind of thing. And Hackman is still kind of bringing some of that. And Hackman is kind of one of the last guys who kept bringing that sort of stage energy where it's like, I'm going to take many of my emotions to the back of the room, depending upon the character. He was still adapting to that, coming from the stage in New York and moving to film. He was adapting to the more realistic or at least toned down style, because you don't need to
hmm
yell in the movies as opposed to the theater where you do need to project. Uh, but I think that part of what makes me think of that is his role in Crimson Tide, because him and Denzel Washington are two guys who love to project, and
oh God,
putting them
yeah,
two together, the opportunity to project opposite each other, I think that actually worked for that movie. The bravado of the two of them trying to outbelt each other kind of makes that movie even more exciting for me. I do like Crimson Tide a great deal. Um, I don't care for the French Connection. I think that's more of a Friedkin thing in his style, not so much
yeah,
a commentary necessarily on Hackman's performance. I know what Hackman is doing. I get what Hackman is doing, but I don't think the film around him is doing much. I think it kind of lays there.
yeah.
That's just my take on it. I think That's one of those movies, unfortunately, where we're just kind of all told this is a classic, and you just have to accept it. And um, no, no, sorry, I can't.
No, no. We like we said before, that was Friedkin at his Friedkinist.
Yeah. But everything else that he's done, though, I mean, we could go on for hours talking about all of his
Mhm.
movies because I mean, there's just every movie he made, like Night Moves, is one of the great underrated detective movies of all time. We
Uh-huh.
just did that one in the classic not long ago, and was really just kind of not blown away, but certainly just kind of inspired by watching him just kind of invent that genre and then make it fit him. He's
Yeah,
adapting the detective genre to his style and how he wants it to play, which is not as the guy who's the smartest guy in every room. He's just a guy with tremendous instincts. He plays the character that way with just these tremendous instincts for things, as opposed to just always knowing 10 steps ahead.
something I didn't realize until we were talking about what we were going to talk about, and I looked at his resume, is that he was in three different John Grisham movies, has three different characters,
Yeah.
which, I mean, John Grisham writes pot boilers and they're, good popcorn movies and stuff like that, but Gene Hackman was kind of like, wow, he's the kind of guy when you think about those movies and any gravitas they have, it's because of him.
Hmm. Oh, the
So The
firm.
Firm,
I
The
mean,
Chamber, and Runaway Jury.
I would say the firm works because of him as well, kind of in the same way that his performance in the Birdcage is sort of the pivot point of that entire
Mhm.
film. I would say his character is the pivot point of the firm between good and evil. He's right. He rides that line because he's not a terrible guy. He's doing terrible things, but you can sense that if he had the chance, he wouldn't want to do those terrible things. And
It's
he that sort of ambivalence to that role that is needed as a bridge between
mhm.
Cruise's sort of really, really good guy and the really, really bad guys on the other side.
And I recently watched that because I read the sequel to that, which is terrible. It's really a terrible book. Um, but I finished the original Firm and I watched it again, and he does this thing where he isn't one of the bad guys, but he's kind of a schlub and he's kind of just a lonely guy, and that is where I think his jumping off point was with the firm was they got him because of that, because of the fact that he as played by Hackman, not necessarily in the source material, but Hackman had that, well, I just don't like my life all that much, but I like being rich and I like this part and I like to travel. So yeah, and that's why he comes off as so vulnerable in his scenes with Jean Triplehorn, where she's seducing him to get the
And
stuff.
that's such a
And
yeah, that part of that movie is so tricky too, because I mean he's a much older man. He is kind of a creep, but you don't want him to be completely a creep, like you're saying. You want to get that vulnerable
yeah,
part of it. And Hackman again just rides that line brilliantly.
yeah, like I know what you're doing. I know that you're coming on to me, but I don't trust you. But I'm so lonely and kind of bored that I'm going to go with it and see where it takes us. So I don't know. I mean, in our lifetimes, he's definitely one of the best actors that ever was.
Absolutely, there's no question. He's one of the best that we ever got the chance to see during our lifetime. Even just such little things like Enemy of the State, where he's playing this conspiracy theorist who's helping out Will Smith, and it's a big budget blockbuster starring Will Smith, and got action scenes and whatnot. But again, he's there to kind of give it gravity that it wouldn't have without him. And
Yeah.
and a character that you can really invest in while Will Smith is doing his hero stuff. You've got this guy who just happens to have strong instincts and the skills needed to navigate this situation. He was the perfect sort of Yoda for that character to
Yeah.
navigate that conspiracy theory plot.
Agreed. Now I know we're going to talk about the Oscars, but one thing that I was reading a little bit today as I was looking through some of the postmortems was the fact that the people that they every year they leave people off the in memoriam, um, and it is for people who died from January 1st to December 31st, and they did leave off two of my favorites, but they put in a whole 5 minutes on Gene Hackman, which I realize I'm not dissing them for that because he was so important, but he's next year's. And they left off, like Tony Todd and Olivia Hussey and so many others that I was just a little like, hmm. But I guess when you're Gene Hackman, you get the right away treatment.
Yeah, I mean they couldn't not do it. I mean, he's an Academy Award winner. He's one of the, incredibly well known and beloved in the world. That you couldn't not do it, especially,
Yeah.
you know, just yeah. It would be the same thing if Clint Eastwood died right before the Oscars. They'd probably have to change the entire thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, just Gene Hackman is just incredible, and I don't know if we'll ever see anything quite like him. A guy who could shift so simply from a leading man role to a supporting role and be equally great in both and appropriate for both. Never the most handsome guy in any room, but he was good looking enough. He was just he get
Yeah.
have an everyman quality. Mostly he just didn't care what it was that his physicality like didn't seem to really matter to him.
Yeah.
He just he's so self-possessed in the best possible way. To the point like a movie like Absolute Power where he plays a president who commits rape and murder. It's like he still he feels like a president even as he's
Yeah.
in this big broad sort of almost soap operatic movie because that movie is a bit broad. He's so good. Gene Hackman is such a great actor that you feel like this guy is the president, even as he's doing these things. Which, granted, I know we have a rapist president now, but it's still probably a murderous president. Too. I'm saying, oh my God, did absolute power predict the future? Sorry.
Oh, maybe.
Oh no, the politics came in again. Oh no. Got to make up for the fact that Trump didn't get his name said last night. So, uh,
Yeah.
which, if we switch gears to the Oscars, it was, I thought, kind of remarkable that people were saying what was needed to be said about, Ukraine and Gaza and other issues, and people were still saying the thing, but they never said his name, not one
Yeah.
time, a single mention of his stupid name, and it just made me kind of feel refreshed.
Oh, hey,
It
Sean.
felt like
Sean,
adults were talking.
Sean, I'm getting some news. Adrian Brody just finished his speech.
Ah, boo. Well, hang on a second, Joe. Yeah. uh, no, that was nice. There were a couple of great bits, like when Conan mentioned Nora and how people want to see somebody stand up to a powerful Russian. I thought that was a really terrific bash at Trump without saying his name.
Yeah.
Everybody talked about Gaza last night. They talked about Gaza. They didn't mention him.
Mhm.
When Daryl Hannah, she just said Slava Ukraine, and that was it. That was all it
Mhm.
needed to be said.
She looked amazing, by the way.
Yeah. People said the things that needed to be said and didn't mention him, and
Yeah.
that's kind of how we should really maybe go forward if we could. If we could just find ways, just talk around him because it's
Voldemort
so
him.
tempting. Exactly, it's so tempting to just sit here and dunk on him all day, and it's kind of works to their favor if we sit here and dunk on him all day. Whereas if we talk around him and actually talk about the issues that he's failing to address or he's addressing incorrectly, maybe that's the way forward.
Overall, what did you think of the show?
I really was impressed, considering they had an uphill battle here, and people don't know these movies. A lot of these movies didn't do that great at the box office, especially the ones that were the big time nominees were not movies that the mainstream audience, were excited about. I thought it was a really terrific show, really smartly started with the Wicked performance. I thought getting that out there first and kind of hooking people with that. Granted, I know a lot of the Wicked people probably tuned out afterwards, but knowing
Well,
that they
they
were
still had
getting,
to wait to see if Cynthia Erivo was going to win.
but yeah, I thought that was a great way to start it, and then Conan O'Brien was really much, much better than most of the recent hosts. Not that no, I love Conan. I think Conan is a national treasure. I was worried that this type of format doesn't really suit anybody who's a talk show host, because it's proven in the past, recent past, that it's not a great position for anyone to be in. If you're not, Billy Crystal or Bob Hope, this really doesn't quite go very well. But he really he pulled it all together. His jokes were smart. He got in, got out. He knew where the jokes weren't, and he figured out how to work around those. And uh, really just a smart economic way to approach his jokes. I promise not to waste your time. Maybe that shouldn't have happened. Like it was a good joke, but then everybody did end up wasting a lot of time, and
Yeah.
so that it felt like less of a joke and more like you actually did waste our time. Uh, but it wasn't a bad bit. It wasn't a bad idea. And it wasn't poorly executed. It just didn't turn out well because the show did end up running 4 hours.
Yeah, it was a long show. I some of the bits like that, I thought, hey, you know what? In the interest of moving things along, and if we're going to cut a lot of the, what I had considered the important speeches, then let's skip stuff like that. I did tune out a little bit towards the end when it was, yeah, a little, like, okay, that part I was kind of tuning out too, and then I'm gonna be honest, like Brody's speech, it was what somebody commented today was when we talk about actor brain, and it was an actor. When we talk about actor brain, this is what I mean, where he just was so into it, and it was like literally 5 minutes long, and everybody else was getting cut off. Um, I was like, come on, you know, it just that I was overall with the show, I was overall happy. I thought that it was incredibly stuffed with commercials. It seemed like way more than normal years. Um, Especially the last hour of it. It just seemed like it was you'd get, somebody would announce a winner and then it would immediately cut to 4 minutes of commercials.
Yeah.
Um, and I it almost made me wish that I had just like watched the highlights of it, um, instead of the whole 4 hour show. And
That Did you watch on the local ABC affiliate?
I watched it. My sister's on YouTube TV, so
Ah, so you got lucky and not watching on Hulu, because apparently,
yeah,
did you hear what happened to the Hulu
I
people last
did.
night? Apparently, so people on Hulu are watching the Oscars, and it reached the 30 minutes after, like it was 9:30 here, I guess, when
Yeah.
they just said, "Okay, well, show's over, bye," and there was like a whole half hour of show left, including all of the big awards, and people watching on Hulu could not get it back on.
Yeah, I saw
Like,
like at least 10 people say they canceled their Hulu because of that.
how do
They were
you
just like,
make a
nope.
mistake like that when you're this big a streaming service? Like, you cannot fuck up like this. Like,
Yeah.
it's just amazing.
I
I
literally almost skipped my sister's, which I go over there every Sunday night usually, and I we were talking about it. She's like, "Oh, I want to watch it with you." I said, "Okay." So I said, because since I worked at 4 a.m., I thought it'd be nice to just watch it from bed. But I went over there, and I am glad that I did not watch it here on Hulu because of that.
Yeah, you missed out. You missed out. My best friend texted me a couple times. I'm like, "Oh, Hulu's down again." Like, what's happening? And I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
well, this is going on now." And she's like, "Okay, well, it's back now." And then texted me, it's like, "It just ended. Like, it's just over now." And there's like, they haven't even given out the big awards yet.
Oh,
So like, she's having to like mess with like an antenna trying to get that going so they can see at least the last few moments of it. It was, real bad. Just real bad stuff. You pay so much for these streaming services and they promise so much and then they can't deliver.
Hulu is particularly bad lately, so it doesn't surprise me at all that they did this. But a major, major, major fuck up.
Meanwhile, during the show, there weren't really any major fuck ups. Like, I didn't really see anything to me that stood out as exceptionally bad. I mean, I could have done without the James Bond stuff, but I understand why they did it.
Yeah.
I know why I was there, but like, it kind of went on for a while, and I don't give a fuck about Doja Cat. I don't even know who the other two women were. I'm 50. I'm
Yeah.
almost 50 years old. I'm not supposed to know who they are, I guess. They both had single name, like one name, no last name or first name. Then Doja Cat right in the middle. Uh, and I didn't find those performances particularly interesting. And then the Quincy Jones thing also kind of dragged just a little bit,
Yeah.
which interestingly enough, it was actually like 30 years ago. That at the Oscars he received the honorary Oscar, which
Mhm.
the 95 awards. I know that because we're going to do that for the next 95 podcast as a review of the 95 Oscars, and this is so much better than the 95 Oscars. I can tell you that. But the Queen Latifah song especially just kind of okay. Yeah, he's on down the road. Yep. He's on down the road. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. It was not, I don't think that was particularly, didn't keep my attention. I like Doja Cat. I think she's actually a pretty good singer after last night. And I didn't really pay that much attention to her. I thought she looked great and she sounded really good. And my sister goes, I didn't even think I knew who she really, that she sang. I thought she just rapped. And I'm like, no, she sings. So, I just think that that just seemed like a big clunky set piece that didn't really belong with
Mm,
when you're trying to streamline something. So,
yeah. Especially when you're going to call attention to the amount of time everything's taking, maybe.
yeah,
And then you maybe want to think about how you use that time and whether or not you're using it to the best of its use. Going back to like the Quincy Jones thing, they could have done in a montage. You could
agreed.
have accomplished the same thing in a montage.
I think it would have been better.
I don't think anybody would have been terribly offended if we didn't have that whole performance like that.
I Even if if you brought Oprah and Whoopi Goldberg, who looked amazing by the way, I love that dress. If you brought them out and they narrated a montage, this is he did this, and then they show clips from The Wiz, or he did this and he was responsible for this. If they'd done all of that, even if it had taken the same amount of time, I think it would have kept my uh, attention a little more.
Yeah, I
Whereas
completely agree.
that was one of the places where I'm like, oh, I think it's time to do my work on my Boba Fett drawing.
So that's one thing, but like nothing was bad. Though that's the key. Is like there really
Yeah.
wasn't anything outright bad. Nothing that comes to mind. Did you have anything that's like bad that you saw? Like I wish that hadn't happened.
You know what? Not aside from that, I'm not going to waste your time member or moment and the James Bond moment. I just I I overall liked the show. I liked some of my highlights because I didn't have that many lowlights. Some of my highlights were Isabella Rossellini brought Laura Dern as her date, and she wore blue velvet in honor of David Lynch, which
Oh,
I thought was the coolest thing. Um,
hmm.
uh, just some of the, I think that some of the winners were pretty spot on. I had, I was disappointed by a few, but overall, I think everything kind of went as it should have, or well deserved. I think that people, um, some of the moments like um, Kieran Culkin's baby thing, I thought that was kind of funny. I just, he's very endearing, and I've never really thought about him all that much until I saw A Real Pain, and then I was like, he's just somebody that he just this is something that he really deserves, I guess. Um, I liked when I liked that Flo won, and it's your turn, Estonia. I just thought that was kind of stupid funny. Every
That was
every
that
time,
was terrific. I did like that a lot.
good callbacks. I thought that Kieran Culkin Conan O'Brien was really a good host. I do like Jimmy Kimmel, but I understand why either he didn't want to do it this year or they didn't want him to do it this year. I completely would see both sides of that. Um, yeah, I overall I wasn't aside from a couple of um my disappointments in the winners, I was pretty happy with it overall.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I liked the winners. Obviously our picks didn't like go as exactly as we wanted, as
Yeah.
exactly as we thought they would, but we weren't obviously terribly disappointed by the way it went because movies we liked actually did win, which is
Hmm.
good. Um, there was nothing horribly egregious. Everybody knew Kieran Culkin was going to win. I don't have as much a problem with Zoe Saldana winning. I thought that was a. I thought maybe I would prefer Ariana Grande's performance myself, but I do
Hmm.
understand. Like Zoe Saldana is not the reason why Amelia Perez is not as good as it should be or could be. It's a lot of that
Yeah,
is the
yeah.
director who kind of ruins a lot of that.
And
Um,
she was the most deserving person in that whole cast that, you know, so
was it? Did you note that she didn't mention Carlos Sofia Gascon?
I
She didn't
did.
mention her in her
I
speech.
did notice that. One of the things I absolutely was gobsmacked about was when Conan O'Brien did that joke about her publicist. I was like, "Oh, girl, what are you?"
Yeah,
Um,
uh,
I know that
I did into
having
her tweets
read,
as well.
yeah, having read some of the stuff that Zoe Saldana said about um, the tweets, I I was not surprised that she didn't bring her up. Um, I was I loved that she talked about being an immigrant and that that was very important and that was something that they can't take away from people, no matter
Yeah,
what.
again, that's another one of those great subtweets to the Orange Goblin is
Yeah,
that bringing that up without mentioning him.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, and I had a lot of people ahead of this that were like, "Well, I just can't believe that um, um, they're even having this because of the wildfires and all that." And I'm like, "Look, Hollywood's always going to suck its own dick, okay? Um, that's just what they do." The thing about it though that is they did this after 9/11. They didn't it's something that's going to go on. The show must go on and they did pay tribute to the firefighters. I liked the skit with the firefighters where they were reading some of the lines and the one
Mhm.
guy kept cracking up cuz he couldn't believe he had to say that on national TV. Um, I just
The thing about it that gets me about that kind of sentiment is that it is. I don't want to be too mean about it, but it's kind of ignorant
yeah.
because not to say that the Oscars are this untouchable thing that must happen every year. I'm not saying that it's like cultural institution that we have to have. It's important to America. No, it's important to Los Angeles. It's important to Beverly Hills because as much as you may not realize it, the economic impact of having the Oscars happen and the amount of tourism that it brings and the amounts of money that comes in because of the Oscars, not to mention the amount of money for charities that come in via the Oscars is actually doing a lot of good. It's actually helping a lot of people. The every award show that takes place is part of this is not merely just a part of pop culture. It's part of the economic system of Los Angeles. And you take any one of those away and not have them, it has a negative economic impact. And the fires already had an extraordinarily negative economic impact. And you do need to rebuild your economy. You do need to bring people back to town to spend their money.
Yeah.
So you need these things. And it is ignorant to pretend that that's not true and say that this is just about ego worship and whatnot. No, no, it's actually about this has become a cultural institution that people want to take part in, and it is a net good when it comes to raising funds, whether it's
Hollywood,
through
yeah.
commerce or through charity.
If you took away all the stars in Hollywood, it would still an industry town. You know, Hollywood, whether they're filming in other locations or whatever, is still an industry town, and the whole city of Los Angeles, in some ways, runs on the Hollywood machine. And if you take the Oscars and you know what, we're not going to do it this year, you are literally putting thousands of people out of work.
Indeed,
And
this happens.
it's a lot of those
This is
people
the kind
were
of thing that
affected by the wildfires.
absolutely and they need to be back at work making money so they can recover.
Yeah,
But this happens in sports, like when major things happen in sports, and it's like they have to have these sporting events because they do draw people. When LeBron James left Cleveland for the first time, the economy of the city of Cleveland shrank by a notable percentage because there weren't
yeah,
as many people going to downtown Cleveland to see LeBron James play basketball. Businesses went out of business because they weren't getting as much business as they were while he was there. These things matter. It matters
yeah,
from an economic standpoint. They have a massive impact. Not having the Oscars would have been a massive impact to the economy and everything that goes around it. Everybody who serves every one of those stars, everybody who serves as a vendor to the Academy Awards, all of those people are affected. It's not
yeah,
just the star, not just the presentation on television. It's not just the TV network that gets affected. It's everybody around them.
yeah. So stuff it.
I I'm not familiar with much TV drama, so I don't know what the situation between Kieran Culkin and Jeremy Strong is. I was told ahead of time that there was some kind of rift between them based off of the TV show that they were on together. That and Jeremy Strong is notably one of the weirder people in Hollywood. So there were a lot of reports that said that they didn't really get along on their TV show, and so it was kind of interesting to see that one of the first things he did was shout out Jeremy Strong and very magnanimously talk about how great his performance was, and of course Jeremy Strong absolutely no reaction, just just nothing. He gives nothing, but I imagine he always just gives nothing. He doesn't smile. He has no
Yeah,
reaction. I watched
I
him.
think he's
They
pretty
actually grabbed
taciturn.
him. They grabbed him on the red carpet, and it was just one of the. It was just kind of like watching an alien try and relate to regular human beings, and
Yeah,
you know, it was just it's kind of fascinating. But like, Conan did that great bit with John Lithgow, where if you go over your time, we're gonna cut to a picture. We're gonna cut to a disappointed John Lithgow to get you to stop. I think next year they should do that with Jeremy Strong and just have him be the cooler. Like
yeah.
when your speech is going on, and it's even if it's getting emotional, they cut to him and he's giving you no reaction. That's your sign to wrap it up.
Do you know what they could have done to absolutely win the night? Is cut to John Lithgow during Adrian Brody, like after the 4 minute mark. Just have him go. You know. I don't know. I
Yeah, Conan setting up and paying off that bit was pretty terrific a couple of times.
yeah.
Yeah, and you gotta love with Lithgow going with the bit too. I mean, I'm sure they set that up ahead of time, but he was ready even when Conan kind of threw him one.
Yeah, I
It's
thought that
mark of professionalism.
yeah. Yeah. Oh well, I mean, okay, well, let's talk about the big wins. I'm gonna go. I've never ever looked up Sean Baker.
Mhm.
I've never thought anything about him, and I understand that he is a white guy. Um, I did not realize that. I, for some reason, always thought he was a black dude. Uh, so I was like, "Who's that?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's Sean Baker. Who was I thinking of?" I still to this day, or till this this hour. I have no idea who I was thinking he was, but I don't know. Um, I loved his enthusiasm for going to the movies.
That was
That
really,
was
yeah.
his speech where he put the Oscar down on the ground. I was like, oh shit, people are gonna bitch about that tomorrow. Um, when he did that, and he was, really imploring people to go take their kids to the movies, I was just like, okay, that's a bridge too far. Leave your kids at home. I'm just kidding. Um, but if he, trying to inspire people to love the movies again, I think was really cool. Um,
Yeah,
he's
I know it's like a kind of a conspiracy theory to say that people have been intentionally ruining theatrical to try and keep dividing us further and keeping us apart from each other. That's there's a conspiracy theory that I've had for a long time, that they don't want us to be in communal spaces where we can actually speak to each other and be nice to each other, because then we won't be as mean to each other. But that is how I feel, and I feel like part of what's been killing theatrical is an intentionality to try and ruin the theatrical experience, to focus on the negative aspects of it. And it was so great to hear him talk about the wonderful things about it, which is that communal experience. That moment that so many of us remember about either maybe the first time you go to a movie. Like, I can still see myself walking up to the theater in East Moline with E.T. on the marquee, and I'm holding my brother's girlfriend's hand as she's walking us in there, and to see E.T. as my first movie, or the first movie that I can remember. And
Yeah.
then, I can just various, like, seeing signs and a packed audience with people just going all the way through. Like, that's the kind of thing you can't have at home. You can't do that at home. It doesn't work.
Right.
That experience will never happen to you when you're at home, but it will happen to you when you're in a room full of people. Like, when I saw Love Actually in a completely full theater, and the laughter, the gales of laughter that are coming in waves over and over again, or the oohs and ahs and the tears that so many people are sharing at that moment. Like, you can't get that at home. You just can't.
Mm-hmm. And there are times when if I have to go to the movies in the morning, there are times where I'm just like, please don't let anybody be there. Don't let the creepy guy who always picks a seat next to the one occupied seat in the theater be there. Um, but overall, like, I saw the monkey in the morning with a pretty big crowd for a Friday morning at 11 o'clock, and the energy that just, like, was all around you really makes up for anything, any quote unquote bad stuff at the movies. Is it expensive? Yes, but it's
Mhm.
not as expensive as, you know, as other stuff that you might want to do for fun. So
And blame the studios, by the way. Give
yeah.
them a little bit of the blame to go alongside movie theaters. Movie theaters need to make money. They have to keep raising prices because the studio owners are like, we want all of the ticket money.
Hmm.
And that's not how theatrical was born. That's not how it was supposed to go. We reached a pretty great place, like in the 80s, where they were able to balance it out, and like, we've given you a place to show your movie, you give us a percentage of the ticket, and we can make money. We can all make money together. But studios got greedy. They've got fucking, again, bullshit stockholders to meet up with, who are just stockholders are ruining movies. In case you didn't know, Wall Street is the problem. We could have
Yeah.
actual competition and great movies if we didn't have stockholders going, make another fucking Pokemon movie, or make another fucking Sonic movie. We need to raise the stock prices again. Fuck off and die, stockholders. That's what I'm saying. Wall Street, Wall Street, fuck off and die. You've ruined everything. The economy, people's lives. There's really just very few good things about Wall Street. It was needed. It was
Agreed.
needed when we started the country. It's no longer needed.
Yep.
That's a tangent. Talking about Nora, I gotta say, just so happy to see that win. As much as I would prefer to see the substance take home everything, I knew that wasn't going to happen, so I couldn't be disappointed there. I really couldn't have been disappointed even if the Brutalist had won, because I do think that the Brutalist is an incredible artistic achievement and definitely deserved all of the attention it received. But Nora was the right choice. from the beginning. This movie is just so it's just so filled with so many different brilliant human things. It's such a human movie. It feels like you're real people, and the way that Mikey Madison took time out to shout out sex workers, and it's like, yes, sex work is work.
Yeah.
You, time to stop pretending about that. It's time to stop pretending that these are evil whores who are seducing men who can't control themselves. Now, men can control
Oh
themselves
no, you're
just
talking
fine. They
about
just choose not
Congress.
to.
You're talking about Congress.
But
Evil whores.
we have sex work to throw our attention away from the evil whores in Congress.
Mhm.
No, these are just people who are trying to make money using their various assets, and good for them. Make that bank. Do your thing.
Well,
There's nothing wrong with giving each other pleasure. It's idiotic to treat that like it's just such a stupid, church related thing. Get your religion out of my sex work is basically what I'm saying.
yeah.
I
Well, the
don't care
moral,
about your morality.
yeah, the moralizing over that movie when oh, I can't believe they're putting this young girl through all this just to make some money, and I was like, she's an adult and she wants to act, and she's doing this because she wants to. Nobody is forcing her to make this movie. Um, I I love that it won Best Picture. I really, 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 really wanted Demi Moore. I think we've talked about this 100 times because, in my opinion, she gave the greatest performance of her career and of the year. Um, it was unlike anything I've ever seen her do, or a lot of people who have won Best Actress. And I think that Mikey Madison has a long career ahead of her. I did talk to a friend of mine this morning about it, and they said, "What did you think?" And I said, I think back to Scream 5, and I I think back to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I think the fact that this movie was so good kind of lent, and I'm not taking anything away from her because I think she is actually, I told you when we reviewed the movie, it actually made me like her, where I did not like her in Scream 5. Um, but I think because the movie was so good, people who voted this for Best Picture were, you know what? I think she was the best that she'll ever be in it. I don't think that's true. I think she's going to grow as an actor. Um, I think I was very disappointed that Demi didn't win, but she was in a horror movie. She's never going to win.
This group of people was not going to vote for the substance beyond as far as it got. Basically,
Yeah.
that's just the unfortunate truth of that.
But
And
I also
oftentimes
thought,
too, and not to take anything away from Honora, it's also a lot easier for the Academy to just tick all the same boxes for every
yeah.
movie.
Well, and I also was very, very surprised that it beat The Brutalist for Best Picture, because The Brutalist is exactly like we talked about last week, exactly what the Academy loves. It does to me say that the voting pool is getting younger. There are probably people that didn't bother to vote, um, who may have voted for The Brutalist, but I think that it shows that the Academy is finally skewing younger. So maybe
Perhaps.
that's a good thing. So
I would like to believe that. I don't know. I can't explain how Honora gets to where it gets, but in terms of being with this brutally old Academy that has been so old for so long. But they did put in a couple of things a few years ago to try and move along the older members, not weighing their vote a little bit less if they haven't worked in a long time. I think was a good change that they did not all that long ago, and hopefully perhaps that's making a difference.
yeah.
For a time, for a long time in the Academy Awards, there were people who hadn't worked in Hollywood in 20, 25 years, and they still had an equal vote to people who were, just joining the Academy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
and it's a different thing. It's a different world. If you're not working for 25 years, if you get into a period of that long of retirement, you're just not nearly as engaged in it as everybody else is.
Yeah, I think that, and a lot of those actors pay more attention to like the Emmys because they're doing more TV than they are to the Oscars because they're like, they left me behind. So,
Big shout out to the Critics' Choice Awards, by the way, for predicting this
mhm.
sweep for Adora tonight. Sean Baker, by the way, tying Walt Disney's record for Academy Awards in a night because he won Best Editing along with Best Direction, Best Picture, and Best, I mean, she's winning everything. But yeah, there was the record for a single person in a single night is 4, and yeah, he got all 4.
Nice. Yeah, I think he well deserved. They talked about that this was such an independent movie that there was only a few people really that worked on it, and that they all took home Oscars. I thought was really good for independent movies because it'll show
It's
that
such
stuff
a
doesn't have to be a blockbuster to get paid attention to.
And Sean Baker just is such a humble guy. I don't know if I've told you this story, but I wrote about one of his first movies that he did, a movie called Takeout, and he co-directed that film. And I watched it and I wrote this, a very positive review because it's a really great movie that not a lot of people have seen. And he's just so humble that he retweeted my review and sent me a little note to thank me for writing it, which I thought that was like really very nice. Like again, the guy who just won Best Director at the Oscars is taking time out for people who remember, before he was a big star. It was really nice.
Yeah.
Just such a humble guy, and it's good to see nice people winning things like that. You can see Mikey Madison learned so much from the women who she talked to and who helped her build this character. You could see how grateful she was and how much she took away from them. It seems like she really was deeply affected by them and their approach to their work.
Yeah, I liked her after seeing this, and I had never really cared about her all that much. Um, so I was glad that I guess if Demi couldn't win, that's who I wanted to win.
Yeah.
I'm really glad that it wasn't Carla Sofia Gascon.
Yeah, I was watching. I kind of was hoping maybe in the best director category, as much as I love Sean Baker, I was kind of like thinking maybe, with this field, like maybe there's room for Coralie Farjat to get in here. But
Mhm.
I'm not disappointed that Sean Baker won. I think
Yeah.
Coralie Farjat is going to have another chance, I'm sure, very soon because she's just too good at this to not be back one day.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm sad that Demi Moore probably will not, unless she does something even more outrageous and great than The Substance, which I don't know how you're going to top that.
There really isn't much opportunity to top that. That was that was incredible. That Conan bit at the beginning with him
Oh god.
emerging him doing horseback. That the second they started that, I almost wanted to turn it off. I was like, oh no, 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 this is bringing back too much.
I was sitting there with my niece and she goes, "Wait, what the fuck is that?" I'm like, "That's The Substance." She's like, "Nope, nope, absolutely not." Like, you've got to see it. It's so great.
uh, it is such a great movie. I'm never going to watch it again.
I almost watched it today, and then I was like, "Oh wait, I got to watch The Apartment."
Oh, hey, a transition. Let's talk about The Apartment. It's our classic this week, directed by Billy Wilder, of course. Academy Awards and whatnot, reminding us how just incredible this movie is. The story revolves around C.C. Bud Baxter. He works at a vague job as an accountant sort of thing, whatever that business does. His main thing is that he trades his apartment because he's a bachelor. He'll trade it to the married guys in the office for the chance to potentially advance and make more money. And you can see immediately this is not necessarily something he wants to do, but he's got a little bit of ambition, at least enough that he kind of is able to justify to himself doing it. That is until he finds out that the big boss, Sheldrake, is also seeing Fran, the woman that he's kind of fallen for, who works the elevator at his business. Bud and her have kind of had a little back and forth, and Bud really kind of likes her and wants to maybe explore something with her, but she's also seeing Sheldrake. And when he finds out, that's kind of the crux of the movie right there. What a brilliant performance by Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine. I mean, their chemistry is incredible, but what Jack Lemmon does with this character, towing this line between being kind of a not good person, and then realizing, that I am a good person, I'm going to do the right things. He's just so great at making you like him and understand him. And, I just, and then of course, his timing is just impeccable with every moment, whether he's talking to the doctor who lives next door to him, or, just his interactions with Fran, the way he seems prepared to stick it to Sheldrake at any moment, but just doesn't quite have it. Like, Levin is just, just blowing me away in just like every scene of this movie. This movie is it still feels fresh. It still feels exciting when I watch it. And obviously there are plenty of dated elements of it, but I really forget all about that while I'm watching this movie. I find it just completely absorbing.
The only thing that seemed dated to me is that like immediately all of these women would go to the HR department about Sheldrake. That was the only thing that felt like, a little bit dated to me. Yeah, Shirley MacLaine, I can understand why she was, she became such a huge star for so long, because she's just so fresh in this movie, and she's kind of that girl that everybody would aspire to be at that time. In 1960, you want that cute, bubbly girl who has a great personality and a good sense of humor. And yeah, sure, maybe she's a little, a little bit of a doormat when it comes to men, but she easily finds herself by the end of the movie, and as does Jack Lemmon. Um, finding out that you have what it takes to be the better person and stronger, and having that both be their arcs, but in kind of different ways. I was very impressed. I'd never seen this movie, so um, yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought that all the performances, Fred MacMurray, who I grew up knowing from Father's Knows Best reruns, and I didn't see Double Indemnity until years and years and years later, probably like maybe 10 years ago or less, to figure out that he was such a piece of shit in this movie. I was like, oh, that's so weird. I don't see him like that. And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess he kind of has been in a lot of movies, but um yeah, I really, really, really adored this movie, and it's probably something I will watch at Christmas now. I had no idea it was kind of a Christmas time movie. Um,
It was
Amy
for,
Adams
yeah.
stole the show. Just her, I'm gonna tell my husband, and he's 5'2" and 95 pounds, but he's gonna come after you. I was like, oh yes.
Talking about Shirley MacLaine, there's an element there where she's almost the template for the so-called manic pixie dream girl.
Yep.
That girl who comes into some schlub's life and improves everything. But Shirley MacLaine kind of takes that that kind of idea, that kind of nebulous notion of what that character is, and she has such a unique energy to her. Like she is unlike any other actress at that time. There's so much polish among the other actresses, or if they're not polished, then they're Marilyn Monroe. And she is not Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe's amazing in what she does, which was an
Yeah.
entirely different thing. But like what Shirley MacLaine does feels so new and fresh as compared to everything else that was happening in the early 1960s. She, right down to her haircut, just the
Pixie cut, yeah.
it doesn't seem like much now, but at the time that was not the look of a leading lady. You don't get
Hmm.
cast in the movie when you have a short hair like that. Like, that like, and her not unconventional beauty, like she's just so much different than any other kind of lead actress, and she brings a whole different kind of energy than any other romantic leading lady at the time. I really adore that, and she stands out so much, and she's just easy to fall in love with. I just had an immediate crush on her the first time I saw this movie, and really every time I see this movie, I get a crush on Fran Kubelik. And then I find myself identifying way too much with Jack Lemmon's character because he's he's not somebody I want to relate to, but I do. I can kind of see myself kind of on that in that moral gray area. Like, would I have let my boss use my apartment for that sort of thing? I don't know. Maybe. like, like, would I be that guy? I don't know. I see a little bit too much of myself, but it's also that the point of it though is that Lemon is such a good guy, and he's such an innately good guy that you know from the start that he's going to do something good, that he's going to overturn this situation and do something that is going to be noble. And that nobility comes when she has the overdose in his apartment, and he helps the doctor to save her life, and then yeah, then quitting his job to because
Hmm.
it like essentially is a protest to all that's happening. Like that
Yeah.
was just the noble right thing to do, and that ending is just it's so perfect. It's just such a perfect ending. Just her showing up at his apartment and deal the cards. Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, I agree. There at the beginning of it, I'm like, I don't understand how this is best picture material because it was, it's just like, okay, it's kind of your everything um movie, but then as it went on, I was like, oh, I get it now. I totally get it.
Well, in a weird way, there's kind of a correlation to Honora, where they're both relatively small in
Yeah.
scale. They don't have
Hmm.
a massive scope. You don't have a big cast. You don't have big expensive sets. You've got a very specific time and specific place. And in that way, that's not going to feel like a best picture when you're talking about best picture being Ben-Hur or best picture being the whatever Lawrence of
Right.
Arabia. This is not that. Nothing wrong with that. Epics are wonderful, but at the same time, Hollywood so often is ready to reward, like, nothing against the brutalist, but like the brutalist is doing the most in terms of
Hmm.
like scope and scale and story and production. It's the most of everything. Dune Part 2 is the most of everything. You can see all of the work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where Nora, it's kind of it's scrappy, and they're catching scenes where they can, and it's light on its feet, and it's moving, and it's tiny. And the apartment kind of has that similar thing where it's very small in scale. It's very much about these characters and not necessarily about the vastness of New York City, but that is a part of it. How
Yeah.
people can feel so small, and yeah, even smaller just by the fact that they're in this giant city. As just kind of there's nothing that's ever commented upon, but it's something that's there in the background of the movie. Like being in a big city can make you feel so lost. I just love that Wilder thinks of stuff like that and doesn't feel the need, like he knows what doesn't need to be told to the audience, like what we
Yeah.
can see that he doesn't have to tell us, and it's just the mark of a brilliant filmmaker.
Yeah. I was, like I said, I was pleasantly surprised. Sometimes I think we see a movie that everybody loves, and I'm guilty of being disappointed by so-called classics that everybody was like, "Oh, you have to see this movie." I'm like, "Oh, great, I will." And then you're like, "Oh, okay." Um, but not this one. This was like I've owned this for a long time, and as I've been going through a lot of my things, I'm like, you know what? I need to start watching some of these movies I just collected because I know that they're classics. And so I'm really glad that we were able to watch this week.
All right, well, do we have any movies next week?
I know, right? This is like the worst time for movies because I was
It
like,
is
what do we
like,
have?
yeah,
And
like my conspiracy theory is proving more and more believable because they're not even putting out movies now.
well, I think that wait, what is this week? No, that's next week. Is that Novocaine one with who I just don't think I like Jack Quaid.
Oh, I'm
Um,
kind of intrigued. I've kind of enjoyed the trailer and the promotion for that one, so I'm interested.
I think it's it's the Scream thing, but of course that means that he'll win an Oscar for this because I don't like him in Scream. Um, this week we
We
have
do
Mickey
have
17.
yeah, Mickey 17. I just pulled that up. Is coming out this week. I'm really looking forward to this one. I love the promotion for this. I love Robert Pattinson, and I want to see what Bong Joon-ho is up to. Like, I have no idea where this is going or what it's supposed to be about. So that is so has me so intrigued.
Yeah, I'm actually really looking forward to that one after the last trailer that I saw for it. Because I have been lately going into movies just before they're starting, just because I don't want to be spoiled. And so
Uh-huh.
many trailers spoil the movie for you that I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go. Just I'm just gonna go now. Um, plus I get home from work and I'm like, I'm so lazy, I don't want to do anything, and then oh shit, it's time for the movie. So um
We also have In the Lost Lands, which is Paul W.S. Anderson directing, Dave Bautista and Mila Jovovich. Uh, doesn't look great because Paul W.S. Anderson is not a very good director. And
agreed.
and a movie called Rule Breakers, which stars Phoebe Waller-Bridge, which has a very interesting premise and
Hmm.
does look very intriguing, to say the least.
Huh. Well, maybe we'll see
So
two movies next week instead of just one.
that would be nice. I definitely am going to see. I'm going to try and get to all three of those because I do enjoy dunking on Paul W. S. Anderson at the very least.
Yeah. I'm
I
I'm
really like Dave Bautista, so I mean, like,
yeah.
I think even in bad movies he's been good. So
I'm gonna commit to Mickey 17 and probably Rule Breakers. Um, but I really hope that I get to I know that like next week is a busy week for me, but I'm hoping to get to see Rear Window at the Last Picture House.
oh wow, that's a great movie.
Yeah, it's going to depend on how late the show goes on Saturday, and if I'm physically and mentally prepared to go see it in the theater. But
Do you want to make that the classic?
we can, yeah, yeah, I love that
Why
movie.
not?
So
Let's
I'm spoiler alert.
let's do Rear Window. Why not?
Okay,
All right.
one of the
So there you go.
Hitchcocks
Thank
I've
you,
seen
Jeff.
the most. So
Oh yeah.
thank
Well,
you.
good. We'll have a good conversation. All right. I'll talk to
I'm
you
gonna
next
go.
week.
I'm gonna keep
Oh,
talking
good.
for like 25 minutes, just to myself, like I'm Adrian Brody. Have a good night. Bye.